and then using the rigger, again with burnt umber and sodlite genuine, and drawing it across the paper, getting it to a fine point. It's not strong enough. What I love about winter in the Arctic is the when you go on the sledge with the Huskies pulling the sledge on an expedition into the wilds for a while. You've got the sledge is laden with enough stuff to keep you going for a week or so, and you've got 2 people on the sledge, and these dogs, there's about 8 to 12 dogs pulling it, and they are so eager to go. They just wanting to get away and pull it, unlike the camel, which is very difficult to sort of get going. These Huskies are just amazing, and they'll take you for hours across the mountains or across the sea ice, and they don't complain at all. Away they go, and then we perhaps stop for lunch, and I'll sort of get off the sledge, and I think, I'll just go over there and sketch that glacier. And I get off the sledge, and I'm in the snow up to my waist. I can hardly move, so I abandon all ideas about going over there. It just shows how amazing these dogs are, pulling the sledge like that. So I'm using the rigger again to bring out these branches. And put some little blobs in. That's too much. A bit too big, so get rid of them quickly. I think I can take that off take the masking fluid off this building here. Try to get it all off. There's nothing worse than getting your painting back from the framer and you still see some masking fluid left on there. But I've lost the whiteness of the cottage, and I've got a little blob there where there must have been a hole in the masking fluid. So this is a 5mm flat brush, which I use regularly for tidying up areas. You know, if I've got sort of little blobs straying out of where they shouldn't stray out of, then they're very useful for getting rid of them. And that's lightened the cottage end there a little bit. Or you can use a larger one. This is a 1/2-inch one for the
Head back, David.
sorry. I just get so excited. So that will lighten it enough. There's going to be a bit of shadow there anyway. And as you can see, the roof has got a wonderful kink in it there. And the chimney is a lot wider than it should be. And this is one of the problems with masking fluid sometimes. You have to be so accurate with it. And even then, especially with rough paper, it's likely to create little things like that. And this chimney's got a rather strange top to it, so it's great fun. So what we do is we can quite easily rectify that, but you can rectify it either by bringing the dark bit down a little bit more and bringing it down there, or by taking a little bit off the top there. We can do that. I sometimes use a scalpel for it. Actually, I'm going to have to go like this. I hope I'm not in the way. Can you see it all right?
Yeah.
So this just shows the way I use a little flat brush. A 1/4 inch or a 5mm brush like this is so useful for, you know, just sharpening it up like that. Sometimes I try to get a deliberate kink in the way there, because it just makes the building look more rustic. But that's the way I do it. And what I might do is put a bit of dark in there afterwards and show you the other way of cook with it. A bit of dark over there as well. But we'll get round to that after the break. And it's wet now anyway. So any questions before we have a break? Or you have your tea? Okay, well, we'll get back to it later. If anybody does want to photograph it and sketch, then it's there for you to During the interval, somebody was asking me about mixing different manufacturers' paints, and if you do find one or two of these colours excite you, by all means, the best thing to do if you're interested in these N. Smith colours is to just buy 2 or 3 at a time, get to know them, play with them, and you can introduce them quite happily into your current range, whether it's Winsor Newton, Dale Brownie, or whatever. So don't be afraid of bringing them into what you've got already. So use some of these really exciting colours, or put them on your Christmas list, something like that, and you know, have a bit of excitement, because we all need a bit of excitement sometimes. Right, now what I usually do is this technique of making the distant peak faint and then bringing in a strong mountain in front of it to give the sense of depth and space. And so this blue-grey background there really pushes it away. If you want to create a sense of depth and space, then that's fine. On this side, this part of the mountain is sort of behind this ridge here. Now what I could do is bring a dark ridge down here in front of it, but I just want to show you another rather nice little technique using an old Christmas card or whatever this is, and all I'm going to do is to tear it a little bit unevenly like that, so that it's just like that. I use this system for clouds, rocks, all sorts of things, and I get a sponge and some nice clean water. I'm just going to bring this down here. We're going to just sponge that little bit there. Just lose a bit of the background there, and as you can see, it sort of gives that lovely sense of the ridge coming down there. And you could create wisps of mist like that. I did an article for Leisure Painter a little while ago and about wisps of cloud that sort of you can use that creatively even when it's not there, to sort of enhance, or if you get a bit fed up by putting too much detail in, or if you want to get rid of something, then, you know, bring a bit of cloud or something like that in. So I'll just get rid of this, make sure my finger's dry, this masking fluid here. This Pebeo gum, as you can see, it doesn't take off the paint that I've already got on there in places, whereas a lot of masking fluid, it's so fierce that it takes it off. That's why I do like the Pebeo gum. And again, using this brush here to lose that little bit that's come down. One or two people have asked me about those Landoni books that I've got there. It's a bit of a puzzle to some people, and there's a real tale behind that. A few years back, the Town Development Officer of St. Wells approached me because he knew that I did cartoons and all sorts of daft things. And he asked me if I could do a design for waterfolk of London. They were up the tourist potential in the area, and they wanted me to design these waterfolk of St. Wells. So I designed these little figures and wondered what they were going to do with them. And they had a tree which was rotten down to about 6 feet. The bottom 6 feet were okay, and they got a wood carver to carve one of these creatures that I designed into this this tree. And about a week later, after this statue went up, the press got on to him, and he sort of came to me in a bit of a flap, and he said, what can I tell them about this? It was you started the... And I said, well, these Sandodis, I love telling a tale. I used to do it when I was a kid. And so I said, these Sandodis, you know, they're amazing little creatures who live in by the lake in Llangindod, and they were attacked by the grogs in such and such a... on St. Cyri's Day. And St. Cyri's is the patron saint of rain. So he's very popular in Wales. And, so I was mixing some real, authentic historical fact with absolute rubbish. And so, to my surprise, the next week in the papers, in the headlines, not much happens in Mid-Wales, the headlines in the paper were all this rubbish that I came out with. So the BBC got hold of it, and they put it on their website, their Welsh website, and the BBC Scotland then cottoned onto it, and they were doing a Gaelic programme on ancient legends of the British Isles. I only made this legend up about a few weeks ago. And so they sent a film crew down to find these Slandonis. I kept well clear. I wasn't going to get involved. So I never saw this program. It was all in Gaelic anyway. But it apparently formed part of their series. And, so that's how that came about. It suddenly dawned on me that we ran nice books. So I spent hours sort of rolling around with laughter trying to produce these books, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was great fun. So that's how that came about. And
is it folklore now?
It is more or less, yeah.
Real fake news.
Yeah. So
When does the case come up then, David?
Oh, I don't know. It was very odd because I did actually. They did persuade me to dress up as this sort of hermit creature who wrote this book and go into Llandod just to publicise it, which I did. And the town publicity officer was walking with me, and we could see people sort of, I looked a bit rather fierce because I had an old Arab jalaba on and a hood and a stick and looked rather fierce. And people were coming along the street, they'd see me and they'd cross the road, get their cameras out. So we went into a cafe to have lunch, and they were still clicking away there. And as we were leaving, there was a long queue at the counter for the food, and there were two policemen at the end there. They were just chatting away to each other, and suddenly one of them looked up and saw me coming, and the look on his face, his eyes. It was an absolute picture. It was so funny. But we had a whale of a time with that story. So I'm just tidying up the building a bit now. I've just finished a book on coastal painting, and that's coming out in June next year. French ultramarine, and there's a lot. I'm putting some new stuff into that. Some of the techniques I've used on these paintings here with the watercolour ground and collage and all sorts of other things as well. So that's going to be a little bit different. And then the book I'm just about to start on now is one on the Middle East and some of the adventures out in the desert and places like that. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm putting some French ultramarine on here, and what I do, the technique I use is, as you can see here, I've put it on quite reasonably strongly there, not too strong, but I've gradated it so that over here it's almost to the white of the paper again. So this gradation technique is very, very useful for creating that sort of effect. Now, I rather like this, but I've got a bit of a crag to put in here, so I'm afraid this is going to have to be obliterated partly anyway. So I think I'll start with the Sodalite Genuine again. Using the brush on its side and creating, you can see it creates a bit of texture just using the brush on its side like that. This paper is so good, this rough paper is so good for creating that sort of effect. And also what I'm going to do now is bring in some of the transparent red oxide into this area. Bringing some red into it will bring it forward. Just dropping in the red in that way. And then with some burnt umber and Sodalite Genuine, what I want to do here is to make this wall, the top of the wall, stand out light against the background. And the same here. And then just losing the edge, the top edge there. This softening off process, losing edges, is so such a useful technique with any medium, but with watercolour, I love to just soften off the edges a little bit. And then again, picking up the rigger, if I can find it. Here we are. Sodalite Genuine again, and all I'm doing is putting in a few flicks with the brush to suggest the fracture lines, make it look rocky. You don't need too much of this, just a hint here and there, and that's enough, and a bit on the edge to vary the edge there. Right, so I did say I wanted to tidy the chimneys up a bit. So number 4 brush. And again I'm going to use the Sodalite Genuine and a touch of burnt umber. A lot of people are concerned about working outside, but if you can do it, it really does help your work enormously. Working from nature, if you do love the outdoors as I do, and I love engaging with people when I'm out as well. Especially abroad, I find that people are quite uninhibited about coming up sometimes and chatting to you. I once was sketching the Eiger Glacier from the side where the railway comes out of the Eiger. There's a little station there, and I was sketching quite close to the station on one occasion, and train stopped, and about 300 Japanese people and came over to me, and I thought, this is going to be interesting. And they came, and they were very quiet. They came behind me, and there were many Japanese ladies there, and they